Okay, good morning. We have a quorum. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
Present.
Senator Southworth, Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
Here.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith,
Present.
Chairman Cook.
Here. First item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes of the October 11th meeting of the committee. Is there a motion that they be considered as being approved?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Southworth,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith,
Yes.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. Motion carries. Total number of items on the agenda today, 296 in the amount of $82,909,609.06. All vendors are registered with the Secretary of State's office. Next is the deferred list, which is from the August PSC amendment list and the October MOA and MOA amendment list. The first item on the deferred list is from the August PSC amendment list with the Personnel Office of the Secretary. If the representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Mary Elizabeth Bailey. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Human Resources Administration in the Personnel Cabinet.
Good morning. I am Rosemary Holbrook, the Assistant General Counsel in the Personnel Cabinet Office of Legal Services.
Thank you for being with us this morning. Co-Chair Meredith has questions.
Well, first of all, we have another contract to consider regarding this. Is that incorporated in the contract we're going to consider later, or is this separate and distinct from what we have?
This is the same contract that's been deferred for the last, I believe, 4 meetings.
Okay.
We have another contract.
Steph's kind enough to remind me we have an amendment to this
Yes,
contract.
correct.
So that is part of this overall discussion we're going to have, correct?
Correct.
And can we talk a little bit about the amendment first?
Sure. The amendment is the current amendment at our last meeting. The request was to add a project due date to the amendment, and we did add language that says that the project will be managed based upon the project plan, which shall determine deadlines and deliverables, and will be managed by the Personnel Cabinet.
What caught my attention about the amendment is first, are we broadening the scope of this agreement with this amendment?
This latest amendment was just the language. We had an amendment before this to amend the $80,000 contract to add $200,000 for additional work by Korn Ferry. And then based upon the comments of the committee by Senator Southworth, she had asked for a due date or language thereof to be added to the amendment. And so we amended again to add language based upon the project plan.
And again, we rely on the contract descriptions. I guess technically we could pull the contracts, but that's rather voluminous, particular number of agreements we have. But it says part of this work is to identify up to 100 distinct positions to be included in the job evaluations review. How did we come up with that number?
That is just that is a recommended a set amount that Korn Ferry recommends based upon all of our job families.
So it's based on the prior analysis that they have done that probably we have 100 more positions that really aren't classified properly. Is that?
It's for them to do benchmarking for us.
Did what?
Benchmarking.
Okay, so the jobs there, the job descriptions have already been created. They just haven't been benchmarked in terms of salary. Is that?
It's for them to do. They take the 100 jobs and do benchmark analysis on those to ensure that. That my staff, when they are reviewing the jobs, that it's it is that we are following the methodology correctly, that we are applying that, and so we can then go back and we can do our own analysis on that job and see if we're coming up with that same grade or score.
So when's the last time we had this type of, I consider it a substantial increase, because we have 300 job classifications, so we're looking at an additional 100?
No.
Or, okay, explain to me.
Okay, 100 was the first benchmark, and so in that has been done, and so now we're asking them to help us complete this whole analysis of the project, all 1,200. So we've asked them to come in and assist us with 300 more jobs.
I'm not sure I heard that correctly. I'm sorry to belabor the point, but just trying to understand.
Okay.
So they're doing an analysis of all 300 positions.
300 job classifications.
So is this 100 part of the 300?
It's an additional.
Additional.
300 is additional.
Okay. Then when's the last time we had this kind of review?
It's been 2005. They were here.
So what's happened over the last almost 20 years now that we broadened the footprint of government where we got 100 more positions than we had in 2005?
It's not 100 more. No, this is a benchmark of the current job classifications that we've had. We always ranged around between 1,150 and 1,200, 1,225 job classifications, and this is our customary review that we do every 7 to 10 years. It takes at least 3 years to finish the whole complete project. So when they were here previously, again, they did the same benchmark analysis, and we went back and did a complete review of the job classifications. And so in between time, we are still working with the agencies. We are still creating new jobs. We are still amending and abolishing job classifications and doing the work that the agencies need us to do to continue as that, so they can meet the mission of their organizations.
Well, I appreciate the explanation, and
Sure.
my concern is still the same I had the last 2 months we've talked about this, and I think it's an outdated, antiquated system that allows Korn Ferry just to perpetuate their relationship with the Commonwealth. And add insult to injury, it's based out of California. You know my concern about that, but that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Southworth, do you have questions with him?
Yes, I wanted to bring up an issue that we haven't discussed yet, but it's very timely based on when everything kind of started getting underway a couple months ago, and that's telecommuting. If Korn Ferry is doing a review and we're right in the middle of this 3-year process of only once a decade happens, and this is 2022 and a lot of people have been working remote and there's the back and forth of who should be and who shouldn't be, are the job classifications right now already including recommendations or ability to work remotely as a piece of this, or is this not being included, or it will be getting included soon, or can we get them to include that?
No, that's not part of their scope. That is not what they do. That is purely an employer decision. And within our realm of, the personnel cabinet within the executive branch, that is not what they're charged to do.
And as far as the duties of the position go, which is part of the Korn Ferry review, teleworking really involves an employee working from a different workstation, but their duties of the job remain the same whether they're in a building or at a remote location.
But would it be fair to say that based on the type of duties, they may classify as a full remotable, partially remotable, not remotable, or something like that?
No, that would not be part of the job classification. That's more on the position level and in a determination by the appointing authority. We would not set that on a job class, and that's what they're looking at, the job class.
Okay, and I understand that's not in their wheelhouse, but I feel like at some point apparently there's been a little bit of a lack of understanding of what's a remotable job or what's not a remotable job, and in this day and age we're going to have to start tagging that on all these different positions. It seems like to me so far it's been either blanket or not based on the work at all, based on some other kind of criteria, like public health department really doesn't have much authority over whether a job can be done in a certain way or not, but those kind of things need to be reviewed, I think, as we're going through each of these jobs. And I know, an auditor in this office and an auditor in that office, still the same idea of how much experience and interaction are they going to have with other people. Do they manage people? Do they not manage people? I mean, all these things. So I want to get that out there. But if perhaps Korn Ferry's not useful in that, then maybe it's just on your all's offices
Right. That would be our responsibility.
to actually implement. But I obviously want to put pressure on getting this done timely. I know you're trying to add money, but they're super expensive, so we're going to blow through $200,000 really fast. I just guess my final question is, when are we going to get an update if the end of the year deadline is met or not met, or if we get behind on, are we getting these done for our study, for our hopeful by the end of the year, whatever your list was?
I mean, we can provide that update to you by the end of the year.
No,
That's what
so,
you're wanting.
are we on track so far?
Yes, we
to
are.
complete? Okay.
Yes,
So,
we
I
are.
mean, it'd just be nice, informational.
Sure.
Send an email. It's not like that critical, but
Right.
I mean, I just am wanting to see this has actually gotten done so we
Yes.
can move forward,
Yes.
because obviously we've been waiting this for years.
Be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments from the committee? If not, do we have a motion to consider the contract reviewed without objection?
I can make a motion for Ivory 34, but I'm not 100% clear on how we're doing this deferred
Okay,
thing.
so what we're gonna do, they are separate, so we have to do the deferred list. Will be a motion for the deferred list, number 16 on the deferred list. We have to do that one first, and then after we do that one, then we'll do the amended one on the Ivory list.
So do I make a motion to disapprove number 16 on the deferred list first?
You may.
Okay. I'll make a motion to disapprove 16.
There is a motion to disapprove number 16 on the deferred list. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Meredith. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Southworth,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith, Chairman Cook,
Yes. That number 16 has been disapproved. Okay,
Motion to approve number 34 Ivory.
okay, we have a, did you make a motion, Senator Southworth?
Yes, I was making a motion to approve the Ivory number 34.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Southworth,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
No.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith,
No.
Chairman Cook,
This is motion for approval, right? Yes. It moves forward. Okay. Is that all we have?
Now we're back to the deferred list, and it should be in order there.
We're finished with them, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've completed your portion of the morning. Let's see. We are all the way down to, this was all part of next list right here. Okay, next item on the deferred list with Department of Education. They are the October MOA and MOA amendment list. If the representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record. Let me ask you that.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm David Cook. I am the Director of Innovative Learn. Oh, there we go. Good morning, Mr. Chair. I am David Cook. I'm the Director of Innovation for the Kentucky Department of Education.
Good morning, Karen Worth, Budget Director for the Department of Education.
Welcome back. Let's see, we had questions on this one. I've lost my spot. Co-Chairman Meredith has questions for you.
Thank you for being here this morning. First and foremost, on the description we received for this contract, it says that leads to the creation of a K through 12 project-based learning ecosystem in Kentucky. What's that mean?
So we are really trying, because we believe that project-based learning is a huge important thing for all students. It provides them a more hands-on approach to their learning. And so we're using this particular grant project to help us to scale that up or spread it among. This is primarily a teacher professional development program, so we're trying to train teachers on how to teach in a project-based learning environment. So the word ecosystem is one that's becoming more and more prevalent in education circles, is looking at the whole of so trying to get as many teachers in Kentucky trained that way as we possibly can to create kind of an ecosystem around project-based learning.
Why this system?
Because there's a lot of research that's been done about students who have an opportunity to actually apply their learning. So they learn it in the classroom, and then they do it in the way of doing projects rather than simply just learning it out of a textbook, but they take what they've learned and they transfer it into creating something or doing something. It's shown to be very, very effective in improving learning for all students.
Then if it is, why isn't it part of the curriculum for our post-secondary educators to make this part of their education and training?
You'll probably have to ask the institutions of higher education, Mr. Senator, because our role is to try to make sure K-12 teachers are prepared to teach this way. So that's what we're trying to do.
I think it's a fair assumption on our part that if you come out of our public university with a teaching degree and a teaching certificate that they are trained. Mm-hmm. But you're saying by virtue of this that they're not.
I think there's just it's newer stuff that we're finding is by research is making a better opportunity for kids when teachers have this in their toolkit. So to answer your question, I think we do need to have that conversation about why teacher prep programs are not focused on this.
Well, the way I see it, as a result of the failing of our post-secondary education system, we're having to spend $5.7 million to put this program in place. Plus, that doesn't incorporate the cost of training teachers to do this supposed new system. So the price tag is not going to just be 5.7. It's going to be substantially higher, and it's a redundant expense if this is something our post-secondary education system should be doing anyway. The other objection that I'll have, and I'm sure you folks have noted before, it comes from California, and I've got a concern about that. Yeah. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cook,
yes.
Are we talking about technical training? Or what are we talking about?
So we're talking about training at all levels of the system. So teacher training, principal training, and district administrator training. So what this is about is training teachers on the aspects of what a quality project-based learning experience looks like, so that they can go back into their classrooms and train and teach their students in this. It's not different content, it's a different way of teaching the content.
One more question, please. Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So why are they going to post-secondary? Why do they have post-secondary education if we're going to train them to do something different after they've already finished learning what they're supposed to have learned to do the job that they're trained to do or they're being asked to do? I'm having, like Senator Meredith, I'm having a little bit of trouble here because it's almost as if we're saying, okay, in your post-secondary training, they're not doing it right. So we're going to add something in here because we want you to do a little bit different.
I don't think that we're saying that they're doing it wrong. I think that we're saying that every day there's new and better ways to teach. And this is a way that can be added on to a teacher's baseline, the way the training they get in their undergraduate program. This is simply an additional element. No teacher's being required to do this. It's just something that teachers want to do. They want to have this additional set of tools to help particularly get to students who aren't getting it the traditional way that they learned in their preparation program. So it's not that they're getting wrong information in their prep program. It's that there's new additional ways to teach every day, and we're just trying to get teachers to that place.
I correct myself if I suggested that you were suggesting that they were doing it wrong. What I'm suggesting is I'm hearing that this is a new way of teaching. Two questions and I'll shut up. So we're not suggesting that the old stuff doesn't work. First question. Second question, we've got teachers who are already overburdened, and I think we can all agree on that, who already are asking for more money because they are overburdened. And maybe I'm seeing this wrong, but are we going to ask them to do more things, to add more things on their plate to teachers that are already overburdened, to a student population which isn't getting what we're giving them now?
And I think your very last statement is the whole reason why we're here. Because there's a lot of students who aren't getting it now. And so when that happens in any of our lives, we want to find a better way to do it for them.
So, but my argument was, and I apologize, because I said I was going to shut up, and I didn't. My concern is that sometimes the reasons the students don't get it is because they have different ways of learning. We can agree on that, correct?
Mm-hmm, correct.
Sometimes the reasons the students don't get it is because there is too much on their plate for them to be able to digest.
So I'm going to go back to what you just said again. I think when a student doesn't get it, it behooves us to help teachers figure out better ways to teach that particular student, right? The student that's not getting it. And if a student is not getting it in the traditional ways we've always taught, why don't we try something where the student gets an opportunity to demonstrate their learning in a way different than the traditional way of learning? So maybe it is a better way for that student. So what we're trying to do is help teachers lighten their load by giving them better ways to address the needs of those students who aren't getting it in the traditional way.
Well, maybe you're talking to different teachers than I'm talking to, because I'm not getting them telling me that this is lightening their load. I'm getting them telling me that they are being presented with more diverse ways to teach a larger number of students in their class, and they don't have time to do this. So my concern is, down the road, are we then going to be asked to fund for more teachers or more teacher aides to be able to cover the extra things that our current teachers, who are already overburdened, can't handle, for students who aren't able to integrate what they're being taught now? And I just want to throw that out as my concern, in terms of throwing more things into the stew when no one likes the stew as it is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Southworth.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. One is, have you, or does the KDE have communication with CPE when they're reviewing the programs for education in the various universities?
We have regular interactions. We have a lot of connection points between CPE and KDE around all the things that we do and all the things that they do. But we of course don't have any control over the implementation of programming.
Has CPE at any point, I mean, I don't know, since you've been there or something, incorporated any of the innovation items? I mean, not just this, but this particularly.
No,
but
in this particular case, Senator,
requirements.
in this particular case, Senator, they're working on quite a few project-based programs where they're learning and teaching candidates in this way of thinking.
And when do you think that might be actually going live or online?
I have no idea. You'd have to talk to them.
Well, I just want to try to get to the bottom, because I mean, that's usually always the question. I think everybody is, in Senator Douglas's words, dissatisfied with the stew. And so trying to figure out how do we get there instead of just piecemealing constantly. But what I want to kind of go back to is the project-based learning actually. I get a little confused about this because I've heard project-based learning, and then it usually goes along with things like Chromebooks requirements. And I really, everybody should know at this point, I am so against Chromebooks in the classroom, it's not even funny. And my understanding of project-based learning is like unit studies, or back when I was in preschool, Montessori style learning. To me, this is not new at all. And to suggest that it's new is it's just weird to me to think that this is even a new thing, because I know I'm the youngest one here, but it's still been 20 years since I was doing these.
I think what I would say is a clarification, Senator Southworth, is it's new in the sense of sort of creating a movement to get more teachers into it. I could have gone 10 years ago to classroom after classroom after classroom and seen project-based learning happening. We just never have thought about how do we get more teachers who don't have it in their toolkit, get it into their toolkit. So the point of saying that it's new is that it's new as a statewide sort of program to get this to happen. We've talked about it in my world for a long time, and we have teachers and have had teachers constantly using it. But your description of it is what this is about. This particular program is about teaching teachers how to engage students in very application-based ways of taking knowledge that they've gained and designing, whether it's building something or writing something or connecting and aligning content together, math and English and math and science and all of those things, in a way that allows them to present to both their teacher, their parents, all of their family members. It's an easier way for me to explain how I learned what I learned rather than simply handing over a test that I took. But this is a way to say, I did this, and this shows that I've learned the content that you wanted me to learn.
Well,
So.
I certainly, I like the intent on this. The intent that I'm hearing is, instead of teachers picking a unit study off the Facebook group that makes us all dance around teepees like Indians, that's not really learning. And so we actually need to figure out how to put some real content into these things and figure out how to marry up content and activities so that we're actually making sure this stuff's sticking as kids move forward in their adult lives. I love that intent. I am consistently underwhelmed by the results I see. And I'm not sure that adding an extra unit study or even an understanding of how to develop a better unit study is going to get us out of the grave of less than 50% proficiency in like every subject. But it seems like something that should be kind of rolled into the science of teaching, essentially. So I'm hoping, if this is a 2022 to 2024 project, maybe we can get people to better understand that teaching's not just, it's not easy. But I know everybody's got different layers, but if we could maybe focus in on the communication with CPE to get after 2024 rolling into helping teachers getting thicker pedagogy classes, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? This is on number 56 on the deferred list. If there's no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on number 56. What's that? If we don't have a motion, just move forward. No motion? Okay, number 56 moves forward. Okay, we are now on number 120 on the deferred list with the Department of Education. We have new reps coming up for that one? All right.
Yes.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning. My name is Robin Kinney. I'm the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations at the Kentucky Department of Education.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Co-Chair Meredith, you want to start us off on this one?
Certainly. Threes always charm. In 120 and 121, I want to speak about those together because they appear to be addressing the same issues as far as I'm concerned. And what caught my attention is obviously emergency assistance to non-public schools. So I guess my first question is, since they're non-public schools, how are they interacting with our public school system? Are they requesting assistance, or how's this program working?
Thank you, Senator Meredith, and thank you to the chair and the co-chair for allowing us to defer these contracts from the last meeting. This program is part of the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools. It was a federal appropriation as part of a response to the coronavirus pandemic. You may be familiar with funds that also came to our public schools, but this program was specifically targeted for non-public schools. Traditionally, our local school districts work with non-public schools for other federal dollars that come to them. That is part of equitable services. However, Congress, when they passed the funding for this appropriation, they decided that it wouldn't work the same way. So they have charged with our state education agencies, which would be KDE, to actually administer this program for non-public schools. So this appropriation, and we have two contracts. They are both with the Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative, who is an educational cooperative that assists. They are recognized by Kentucky statute, and they assist with lots of things as it relates to our public schools. But in this case, they are helping us to administer this program for the non-public schools. So we did go through an application process where our non-public schools would actually request funding from this pot of money. We went through a review process in accordance with the requirements of the Act, and that's how schools were selected to be beneficiaries and to receive an award from this pot. There are some differences. This is our second round of EANS funding. Our first EANS funding, we call it shorthand EANS 1, and this is for EANS 2. The department actually did a lot more of the administration of EANS 1, but we have reached out to an educational cooperative to help us with the administration of EANS 2. So to answer your question, Senator Meredith, that's how our non-public schools have access to this funding. They actually applied, they went through a review process, they are awarded a certain amount of funds for each school based upon certain criteria, and then we're asking OVEC to help us to administer this fund and the program.
Appreciate that the explanation. Once these schools receive the funding, is there any type of follow-up from the Department of Education as to the effective use of these funds?
Sure. The department actually is still charged with oversight of all the funds. These funds, like many federal dollars, they are reimbursement based, so we do not provide funding in advance for these funds. Under EANS 2, a little bit different than EANS 1, we actually don't even reimburse really. We actually are charged to procure the service for them. We pay the bills on their behalf. And I'm saying we, but it's this partnership that we have with OVAC. They are actually doing this work for us. So they are procuring the services. They are obtaining the services. They are obtaining the commodities or the equipment. And then we are providing those to the non-public schools. So there's really no dollars that are actually hitting the non-public schools from EANS 2.
Say that last part again.
The dollars are not actually hitting any of the non-public schools in EANS 2. All the payment of the bills, the payment for the commodity is actually being managed by OVAC with oversight from the Department of Education.
Do you know how many applications you've received?
How many applications?
Yes.
We have 59 schools, non-public schools, that are participating in EANS 2. So various sizes across the Commonwealth, impacting about 12,000 students.
What's the criteria used to determine whose application gets approved and doesn't get approved?
So they have to meet certain criteria under the Act. The non-public school under EANS 2 has to have an enrollment population of low-income students of 20% or more, and they have to be they had to be in existence as of March 13th, 2020. So they were already schools in existence as of that date. They have to follow state law to the extent that there is state law that governs those non-public schools. And I'm trying to think if I've left anything out. But they went through the process of application, scoring, and then award based upon their enrollment and making sure that they met the criteria of the Act.
Well, I appreciate these are federal funds, but I wonder, again, I speak from ignorance on this like I do most subjects, but since our Constitution, state Constitution, says we can't expend public funds for anything other than public schools, is there a constitutional issue here?
I would probably leave that to people smarter than I am to debate the constitutional issues of whether this is constitutional. The Federal Act does allow and really just charges us to be administrators of it and provide oversight. So that's what we are doing in conjunction with OVEC. We're providing that oversight and administration of the funds.
But in reality, we are expending state funds as well, because I assume that a portion of your salary, everybody else's salary, are used to administer this program. So,
no, sir. The funds from that from EANS do allow for funding of positions that support this work. So any of the staff that are working on this have that funding supported through the federal funds.
So you would be, in essence, reimbursed by the federal government for?
It's an appropriate expenditure for administrative cost
Okay.
associated with the funding.
Okay. All righty. That's all I have, Mr.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion. This is on numbers. We will do 120 and 121 together.
So moved.
We have a motion by second. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
I vote nay, but I'd like to explain my vote, please.
Yes, sir.
I know these are federal funds, and so they're kind of out there for everyone to be using, and I think that it sounds really great, but my concern is with the continuing growing, not only of our federal bureaucracy, but also with the challenges that we have trying to rein in some of the state spending and expansion of our state government. I guess I feel just because the money is there that we shouldn't be always taking it. The money comes from the taxpayers. I'm just explaining this vote. I feel the money is coming from the taxpayers, and the taxpayers really want us to be their advocates in how this money is distributed and whether or not it needs to be distributed or go to certain causes. And Mr. Chairman, I just don't feel right just because money is there that we should use it. Thank you.
Senator Southworth,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith,
I'll explain my vote. Since I made the motion, I vote aye on this, and I share a lot of Senator Douglas's sentiment, but I do appreciate that this is targeted towards our most economically disadvantaged, and we consider a lot of contracts during the course of a year here, and I've always thought we've been remiss that we haven't focused more on the core problem that's causing many societal issues, and that's poverty. And in a backward sort of way, I think this helps address this, because if we can't educate our kids, the poverty cycle is never going to be broken. So again, I vote aye. Thank you.
Chairman Cook,
I vote aye. Motion moves forward. Okay, thank you all. Excellent testimony.
Thank you.
Next order of business is consideration of the agenda, including the deferred list, personal service contract list, personal service contract amendment list, memoranda of agreement list, memoranda of agreement amendment list, and Kentucky Entertainment Incentive Program agreement list, and the corrections list, except for those items selected for further review. Do we have a motion to consider the contracts reviewed without objection?
Could you say that again? That whole.
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Douglas. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Mentor. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, before we got on to the next part here, it is 9:45 already. We spent 45 minutes getting to the third list. So just warning to the committee, we need to pick up our pace a little bit. Okay. First item on the polled list with the Kentucky Community Technical College System. These are numbers 6 and 7 on the routine PSC green list. That's Kentucky Community Technical College System, 6 and 7 routine PSC green list. Please introduce yourself for the record. Make sure your green light is on your microphone.
Good morning. Paul Zarapata, president of KCTCS.
Good morning, Dr. Wendy Fletcher, and I'm the Resource Optimization Chair for KCTCS Board of Regents.
Good morning, Lynn Hillis. I'm the CHRO.
Get your green light.
Oh, sorry about that. Good morning, Lynn Hillis, CHRO for KCTCS.
Welcome. We'll let Senator Southworth kick it off.
Thank you. I am, starting on number 6. We were on the analysis and compensation study, and my concern, I was trying to think through, we have a group here that's based out of Chicago that seems to me nationwide, and it's my understanding some of the people working on this project, though, are from Kentucky, but I want to get to the bottom of the people that are suggesting what is a good pay scale, the people that are suggesting how we should be more diverse and inclusive, or whatever else we've got all going on here. I have concerns about, the people that preach diversity understand everybody else the least. And we've got people, we've got a variety of cultures and subcultures in Kentucky that concerns me a lot of the national outfits do not understand. So how much are these people helping for our $1.5 million here dollars, and then how much are we having to sort of read between the lines and figure out what we're going to do and what we're not going to do?
So I'll take this one if that's okay. So as the chairperson of the Resource Optimization Committee, our committee was comprised of governmental appointees to the Board of Regents, as well as faculty and staff members of the Board of Regents, and we were advised by 4 of our KCTCS college presidents. So this group really grilled this group of vendors as well as the other bidders to this process to make sure exactly what you're saying is carried out in this project. We don't want someone coming in telling us what we need to do to make us more appealing to the rest of the world. We want to make sure that what they're doing is going to help our colleges, our presidents, and our system office provide the best service to Kentuckians. And Huron by far met that bar.
I appreciate that, because that's pretty much, we're relying on you.
and we take our job as fiduciaries of this system extremely seriously. And I think that that's why we're here. There's been a lot of talk about stew today and soup today. Imagine trying to make that soup 16 different ways across the state on 70 different campuses. You want to really muddy the waters? That's the way to do it. So this Resource Optimization Committee has charged President Zarapata. The entire board has unanimously supported this project for the last 9 months and has moved this project to the top of our priority list to ensure that our tax dollars are being spent in a system that is giving Kentucky taxpayers and students the best return on their investment possible. We see that there is a lot of room for improvement and efficiencies across the system, and that things aren't really done the way that they were done 20 years ago. This study is going to give us the data and you the data that you need to make legislative decisions, for us to make internal policy revisions, and for us to move the system forward to be the most agile system it can be, because we are the workforce drivers. KCTCS is the best example of money well spent in Kentucky, because we do get people into the workforce very quickly with credentials that bring them up and out of poverty. And so we see this project as a huge investment in Kentucky's future, and the return on this investment is going to be 3 to 5 times this, we believe, in the next 5 to 10 years. So, historically, and please forgive me, educators in the room, education tends to work on these long-term 5 to 10-year strategic plans. That is not the world we live in anymore, and this Board of Regents recognizes that. We need a system that is very agile and can change in 2 to 3 years as technology improves, as education improves, as our workforce needs change across the state. And Kentucky is a very diverse place. I would not say that we necessarily have 16 distinct different cultures here, but I will tell you that the needs of the communities that KCTCS serves are very diverse, and we need a system that is agile to those needs. And we believe that Huron is going to give us the data we need to move the entire state forward.
Thank you. Let me move on to number 7.
Let's finish them. We're going to handle these differently. So,
perfect. Okay, that's all I have.
First off, your presentation was fantastic. Good job.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments on number 6? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve that without objection.
Second.
We have a motion by Representative Hart and second by Senator Southworth. Clerk, please call the roll. This is for number 6 on the green.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Mentor. Senator Meredith.
Explain my vote briefly.
Yes, sir.
First, thank you for your presentation. You did an excellent job. I appreciate the passion you bring to this. It was excellent and certainly convinced me we need to do this, so I vote aye.
Thank you.
Chairman Cook.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Okay, let's move to number 7. And Senator Southworth, since you were getting ready to go there, we'll start you off with number 7.
Yes, so a little bit of the same theme. So now we're in Georgia, and we've got a group that can tell us how to be the diversity, equity, inclusion buzz phrase that I'm pretty much, I don't like that buzz phrase because it's a buzz phrase. We're doing an assessment, and it's hard for me to understand how we have a group in Georgia able to thoroughly assess the Kentucky, all the little minutia and subcultures and stuff here, because if you look at a national viewpoint, it's like, check these boxes that makes you qualify for, put the star on your badge to say you did it. And I don't find that matches anything my experience here in Kentucky. So what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is how this $154,000 review is going to get us anywhere. We probably could watch a YouTube on what everyone else thinks about DEI and come back and just do our regular daily lives again and have been none the better for it. So how do we explain what's going on here and how this is going to really help you all?
Yeah, I think this is not necessarily, the contract reads a lot about DEI, but I think for us internally, it's more about welcoming and inclusive. So, and the study starts out in the system office, so it does not cover the 16 colleges. So it's really looking at how does the system office create an inclusive environment so that we can then help the colleges. So there are 4 aspects to the study. The first is benchmarking with other systems similar to ours to find out what they're doing around this particular area of inclusivity. The second is listening to some of the stories that you would say tell about our culture and what is our culture about. The third is really looking, and this is what's most important in my perspective, is looking at our system-wide policies and procedures that could have implicit bias or impact our ability to attract and retain talent. So right now at KCTCS, we have probably about 6 buckets of positions that are very hard to attract. Clinical, some of our professors and faculty. And when you put out a job description, there could be some things in that job description that keep certain people from applying for those particular jobs. And so the most important thing to me, again, is to have this organization tell us, are there policies and procedures that we have within KCTCS that is limiting our ability to attract the talent that we need to meet the needs of the Commonwealth?
Okay, so it sounds like maybe it's a more focused on policy and procedure review, which I can't recall for sure, but I feel like there was a disaster policy I got made aware of maybe around a year ago or so that did get fixed, and I don't even remember the topic exactly, but those always need to be reviewed. Is there not a committee already in the school system that is, in the KCTCS system, that is always kind of, the bylaws committee or whatever that does periodic reviews of those type things? And I understand what you're saying as far as, are we implicitly biasing? But my big question for this outfit out of Georgia is, do they understand implicit bias? Because, personal example, I'm in law school. My law school has extreme bias against what you would consider to be people that have civil rights, right? Well, why is that going on? And the bias outfit isn't even solving it. So it's like, are these people biased in their biasness? So just like, how do you solve these things? I think at the end of the day, you have to just pass it around to a whole lot of sets of eyes. It doesn't really matter if they're from Georgia, but why not just have them be from Kentucky? I mean, we have a lot of different people here. We can get that where we need it here.
I think some of the concerns are it's the same sets of eyes that are looking at these things, and the changes just don't happen. This organization, if I'm correct, did some work at Jefferson in Louisville. They attribute the leadership there and some others at the college attribute some of their large gains in URM enrollment to what this company did. I don't know the details specifically, but they do have a great reputation, and we are having trouble recruiting and retaining talent right now.
Is there any way we can get the details of like some kind of tangibles? I just feel like we have zero tangibles on this. So somehow
Absolutely.
to help them find people. Well, what was it? And does it need to be recontracted with this group, or can we just talk to those people in Louisville and say, well, what was it? And now we know, and so go do it.
Right. Fair enough. Yes, we can definitely come back.
Senator Meredith, you have a question, comment, sir?
Yes, sir. You look at the company, the title is Center for Strategic Diversity, and contract type is Equity, Inclusion, Diversity, and contract description talks about it again, so we can't say this isn't about equity, inclusion, and diversity, but I guess do we need to acknowledge that our Kentucky Community Technical College system is plagued with issues of equity, inclusion, and diversity? I wouldn't say we're plagued with issues. I think that we've got some issues that we may not be necessarily aware of that we do our best with it, but I wouldn't say it's a plague. Then I guess I'd have to ask, why is this the starting point? It looks like a solution looking for a problem, particularly with workforce issues. Right. How do you know it's not pay? How do you know it's not about fringe benefits? Why is this a starting point? Sure.
I think part of our issue is about pay, and that goes back to the comp study. So what we're seeing is pay is an issue, but I think this is more about opening up the applicant pool to broader applicants that we don't know if we are doing anything that may be prohibiting that. So, for example, job descriptions or when you go out to apply or when you go to apply for a position, are there things where we may require education or higher education degrees that a particular position may not need those. So you could be eliminating candidate pools from applying. And those are the types of things that I personally hope that this study looks at. To me, this is not about the diversity piece of it, which it is by bipartisan. It's more about how can we open up our ability to attract different candidates, and are we doing things internally that are prohibiting us from doing that?
Well, I guess I kind of echo Senator Southworth's sentiment here is if you suspicion that there's a problem, why aren't we just asking our students and asking our current employees and follow their lead? Because I know what's going to happen here. By virtue of the name of the company, they're going to come back and they're going to tell you, yeah, you've got issues with diversity, equity, inclusion. So what happens then? Well, then you're going to engage consultants to come in and do a massive overhaul of your policies, your procedures, your job descriptions, which is going to cost more and more money. Then they're going to come back and say, you've got to train your staff and even your students that we're addressing these issues, and that in itself is going to cost more and more money. So this isn't simply $154,000. I would imagine it could ultimately be a multi-million-dollar project. And it looks like I haven't heard anything today that suggests that this is a problem that is immediate and is a priority. And quite truthfully, it looks like it's in reaction to the current political social environment that we want to be on board that we're against these issues. I don't see substance to this. I truly don't.
Senator Southworth. Sorry, Co-Chair Meredith, were you finished?
Well, again, it's the totality of the project. I wish I could say you're just going to spend $154,000. I think it would be better spent, but it's going to be substantially more than that. And until somebody can tell me, how much this whole thing's going to cost us, I don't know that I can support it. Aside from that, you haven't convinced me today that the issues with recruitment are related directly to this. If it is, what percentage? I guess that's what we're going to have the study to tell us, but it's like we're getting the cart before the horse. And I think it's much more simplistic than that.
That all?
I guess unless they want me to engage in a consulting contract, I can tell you how to fix this thing, quite truthfully. It's not that complicated. It goes back to the values and vision of any entity, even our community college system. And it's as simple as you have as part of your values that we're all going to love one another. And we're going to treat our neighbors like we want to treat ourselves. And I think maybe every community college, you mentioned 16 campuses, 70 buildings, that you put a placard, a bunch of above each one of them. And we'll plagiarize Jeremiah 29:11. And we'll say, we have plans for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future. And if we commit to those are our values, and that's a vision for any organization, you don't need the rest of this stuff. It's window dressing. We have to understand that you're never going to change the culture of an organization until you change the hearts of men and women. And this doesn't address any of that and never will. We're missing the target. You're going to spend millions of dollars, and I can tell you, it's not going to be effective. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Southworth.
I want to come back to the RFP because I didn't get a chance to fully review everything that you had sent. But for the RFP on this, did it talk primarily about what you just mentioned on identifying where you're missing candidate pools, or was it other stuff or was it all mixed in?
I think they have agreed to look at 10 to 12 of our procedures and policies. I personally want them to look at some of the things that I talked about. I would think that we need to discover with them what are the additional policies and procedures that we have. So, for example, could it be in our corrective action? Could it be in our performance management? So there are many things that impact our employees that I think we're looking for implicit bias in those types of policies and procedures.
Well, I would suggest the easiest way to learn about implicit bias is get yourself around people you have no idea who they are, where they came from, and you learn a lot of interesting things. But you don't really need a contract consultant to tell you that. But what I would actually love to see is what you described relating to missing candidate pools. And what I'm really mindful of doing right now, if we have the votes, I'd like to defer this contract, and I'd actually like to see an amendment. I don't even know if this outfit is the right outfit. Maybe we just need a totally new RFP if that's the right thing. But I'd really like to see where we're missing candidate pools, because, you know, Corn Ferry could maybe help us with this. But we need to figure out these job descriptions that we're asking for. I have seen it too many times. It got in style about 30 years ago to say everyone needs to get a bachelor's degree. And it's out of style already. And we need to get back to what are the actual skills required. And everyone I know is not eligible to apply for all the jobs they would be amazing at. So I think that is huge. And if you got that opened up, would that not have a waterfall effect on the diversity of the workforce? Because everybody didn't just pop out of the cookie cutter. So I think, you know, maybe it's a totally new RFP. Maybe it can be done as a modification. I'm not looking at the contract. That's your procurement office can fool with that. But that's kind of where I'm leaning and going, because I do think that needs to be addressed. But I'm not entirely sure it's going to get really picked up as the focus. And if we spend $150,000 just on that, then I'd be cool with it. But I feel like it's going to get about $1,000 worth of effort out of this whole giant haystack we're looking at.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to defer if the agency is agreeable or has actions in mind.
I completely agree with the senator. So I do think, and I've only been with KCTCS for 4 months, so I'm in a learning mode. This was put together before I got here, and that's not an excuse. But I do think there are ways that we could get at the candidate pool and the true retention and attraction of our employees. We've just started to put things together, such as exit surveys, to understand why employees are leaving. So I completely agree with the senator.
So just to clarify, when we defer, it basically throws it at you and say, can you make a change to this? So we can really only get anything accomplished by deferring if you guys have a plan of action in mind that you could take, whether that means amending contract language or if we need to just disapprove it and throw in the garbage and you get a whole new RFP. We can decide that later if you're not sure yet, if you need time to look into those possibilities. When we defer, basically you come back and tell us, okay, now we have a plan next month.
I think after consideration, after hearing some of the comments today, I think we're ready to pull it and trash it and go back and take a look at some potentially other RFPs.
I would agree.
So are you saying we don't need to defer? You want to just withdraw and then we don't even?
I think we're going to withdraw.
Okay. I can withdraw my motion. I don't even know if I need a motion if they're withdrawing.
Well, we need a motion to disapprove, I think, at this right. We still need to disapprove. We can't unless can they withdraw?
The agency
can withdraw it.
Okay. If you want to withdraw?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're done.
Thank
you all very much. Okay, next item on the poll list, University of Kentucky. Number 11, 12, and 16 on the routine PSC green list. Welcome our friends back. I know they know what to do up there.
Good morning, Chairman Cook, Chairman Meredith. I'm Bart Harden. I'm the Director of Government Relations. I have with me Barry Swanson, our Chief Procurement Officer, and we'll address these in whatever order committee pleases.
Mr. Chair, since I have requested these be pulled, I would like to do them together. And my issue is very simple. The letter that we got explaining the necessity for these, what it doesn't tell me is what the hourly rate is. I know it exceeds $125 an hour, but I didn't see anything in the letters that told me what the maximum hourly rate might be, could be, should be.
I thought that was in here, but I could be mistaken.
16 does.
Good morning, first of all. To answer your question, I don't know exactly what was submitted to you for review, but the documents that we submitted do have, or at least on the
on the Caldwell intellectual property law has it's an attachment.
Mr. Swanson, I'm not sure. Is your mic on? Because I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I believe it's on. Yeah.
Okay.
If the green light's on, you're on.
Sorry about that. The Caldwell intellectual property contract has rates. It's in an attachment. I'm not sure if that was part of your packet or not.
No. All I have is the letter that you submitted. And again, it doesn't address any hourly rates. It talks about a flat fee and that it won't exceed total dollar amount, but I don't know what the hourly rate is.
This contract is a little bit different. There are flat fees for certain tasks, but there are hourly rates too for tasks not covered by those flat fees.
We got it here. Hold on, I'll read it so the whole committee knows. It will range between $100 and $300 per hour. All right, and the hourly billing rate for our practitioner ranges between $300 and $850 an hour. The 100 to 300 is for sports staff. Sorry, so 300 to 850 for practicers, and 100 to 300 per staff.
Do you have their hourly rate on Cromwell?
On the prowl and mooring one, I'm going to own up to an error that was occurred in my office. There was an attachment that was supposed to be sent over to you, and it was inadvertently left off. I've got that with me. The hourly rates range from $100 an hour for a support service person type position to $695 an hour. Both of these contracts, the two that we've talked about, are for intellectual property type work that is very specialized. These contracts come out of our pool that was competitively bid, and we utilize these contracts as this need occurs. This is, again, this very specialized work that some of this work requires membership to a separate bar. It's not, it's a very specialized and narrow field, and so these specialists, we're somewhat of a captive audience, but there's not a lot of a competition in this area. But it's very important that we have this expertise for these very complicated projects.
Well, if there's not a lot of competition, there should be at $850 an hour. I've seen of late intellectual properties in name, image, and likeness. Assistance from attorneys is really driving a premium price. I suspect maybe in the next 5-10 years we'll have an abundance of these people, and being a capitalist society, maybe that will drive down those rates. But quite truthfully, I think $850, particularly when our limit is $125, is absolutely ridiculous and atrocious. But it is what it is. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
At some point, I think we've talked about it before, we are going to have to look at our hourly rate we have in this committee. I think that probably needs to be. I'm not sure when last year that was done. Okay, Sir Meredith, do you have a motion on these contracts?
Motion to begrudgingly approve.
Is there a second? You're happy to second? This is for 11, 12, and 16. We're grouping all three. We have a motion to second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas.
Pass.
Senator Southworth.
Display my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to vote aye. I actually don't think we should change our $125 an hour, because it's amazing how many of these we get to come in at $125. And I think if we changed it to $200, they'd say $200. So I think that's pretty cool. Unfortunately, we do have to look at these. I will say I think there's only about 20 students in my patent law class this semester. And so while they keep advertising and trying to get people to go into these fields, I'm not sure there's like a ton of them still. And you don't see me being a patent attorney anyway. It's just on Friday nights. It's convenient for me. So I vote aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Mentzer. Senator Meredith.
Aye, begrudgingly.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. Contracts move forward. Thank you all very much. All right, we go from University of Kentucky to the University of Louisville. We have numbers 19 and 20 on the routine PSC green list. Representatives are here. Please come forward, identify yourself for the record.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Angela Curry. I'm General Counsel for the University of Louisville.
Welcome, Angela. You by yourself today?
I am by myself today. I think I have our Chief Procurement Officer is on as well. I see her name. And I believe we've got some representatives in the audience, but I'll be speaking on these contracts today.
All right, very good. We'll go with Co-Chair Meredith. You want to start us off?
I most certainly will. I'll be glad to. If I can find Ms. Curry's letters. Just a second, please. First is, it looks like 19 or 20 are basically the same contracts providing the same services. Is that fair?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct. I think the issue here is that K&L Gates obviously has the cheaper rate, and that's where we would like to go. There was one carve out on certain matters where there was a conflict of interest, so we needed to make sure that we had a backup in the case that that particular issue came up. We don't expect for it to, but we wanted to be prepared. So we went with two firms. We did do a competitive RFP. These were the top two firms in terms of experience and cost, but the preference would be to go with K&L Gates because obviously they have a much cheaper rate.
Exactly. That's what caught my attention. Much cheaper. And again, why can't we give this business to this one firm? Explain that to me again.
There is one carve out when they did a conflicts check. So that's sort of when you go with a new firm, they run your name through all of the clients that they represent, all the matters to make sure that there's not a conflict of interest. There was one discrete issue that they would not be able to advise us on. And so because that issue is not completely closed for the university, we needed to make sure that if that came up within the next 2 years that we had someone to advise us. I don't expect for it to, but sort of the work that we do is preparing for worst case scenario. So that was the reason why we had Hogan Levels as a backup. But the plan obviously is to use the less expensive firm unless that particular issue comes up.
Well, explain to me, if you would, your assertion that this is a sole source. This is contract number 19.
So it had previously been a sole source and it was pulled last year. And the request from this committee was that we do a competitive bid. So we did that. We did a request for bids, and these were the winning firms based on cost and experience. And these PSCs resulted from that RFP process.
So I guess I'm missing something here. I still don't understand why this would be considered sole source. I appreciate that y'all have had a relationship with them. They've done work in the past, but I don't know that.
So I don't know if Sally, if you can speak to that, but my understanding is that it was previously a sole source, but this actually, these companies won the bid that we conducted. And Sally, I see you're off mute, so I'll stop and let you weigh in.
Well, it was also that the reason why we need to use them because of their area of expertise that the general pool that we have at the state rates cannot fulfill. So it was bid competitively, but why we need to engage these two firms is based on their area of expertise that the hourly state rate does not possess. So maybe the terminology should not have been used, but we were explaining why that they were needed. It's their expertise is unique.
How many firms responded to the RFP?
I believe we had 4 that responded.
And what was the variation in the rates?
The rates were about the same. I mean, because we're dealing with ERISA issues, which relate to retirement, and then we're also dealing with healthcare regulatory issues specific to Medicare and Medicaid. It's a very small group of firms that have that level of expertise and do enough work to have the expertise that we need. So the rates weren't incredibly different. Really what made the defining choice for us is the clients that they had, the experience that they had. We specifically wanted firms that dealt with universities that had an academic medical center, as the University of Louisville does, because there are very specific issues that come up in that context. So we wanted to make sure that if we have that, we're not dealing with someone who has a broad understanding of Medicare, Medicaid, but has never worked with an academic medical center. And so that's really what narrowed it down to these two firms.
Were either of these two firms the lowest price?
I'd have to pull that. I don't think so. I know that Hogan Levels in particular was at the top end, and they're there because of their extensive experience. And so while we appreciate that, and they probably hate to hear me say this, but I'll say it publicly, we're not planning to use them unless K&L Gates is unable to advise us due to a conflict of interest.
Well, one of the things that caught my attention is in the letter was that Hogan Levels currently works with the University Research Foundation on various matters. This familiarity with the university puts them in a unique position of being able to provide services efficiently in a more cost-effective manner. Well, I think that's a subjective assessment, and it always concerns me when we limit firms we're considering an RFP because it appears that, well, we have a relationship with these folks, we like them, to change creates a little bit more work for us, so we think we need to use those. And again, I don't think that fits the sole source criteria. Other concern I have is with the disparity in these rates, the differences, and it's quite substantial, $9.65 an hour to $12.55 per hour. Now that $12.55 becomes the market rate. Every other law firm is going to be able to take a look at this, particularly if they have this expertise. And next time we do an RFP, that becomes the kind of the floor for this. So I think it's kind of built-in inflationary pressures that are facing us right now. And personally, $1,255 an hour, you equate that out, that's over $2 million a year for an individual. I could find a cure for cancer and wouldn't be paid that much money. And I think it's just, it's ridiculous, particularly when we know we're going to have to pass this on to our student population. And with the cost of post-secondary education being astronomically high to begin with, it's just, this is one of the reasons why. You just can in good conscience approve a contract that pays that kind of rate, particularly when it was not the lowest rate. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Senator Southworth.
Thank you. I was perhaps misreading, but also maybe correctly reading this letter, trying to figure out why it was sole source. It looked to me like there was an RFP, and then none of those were amazing because the rates were so high, and so we kind of went this sole source with this K&L Gates. But what I wanted to ask was if we're not really probably going to end up needing these people unless this one item pops up.
Correct.
In order to avoid having the $1,200 on the record that's been an approved contract, which, as Senator Meredith just mentioned, raises the tide for, all of the other boats in the world. Wouldn't, and I'm not a procurement expert here, somebody remind me though, wouldn't a conflict of interest arising with the current counsel on contract create a provision that would allow us to have an emergency contract or a sole source later with whatever this group's called, Hogan, were that issue to pop up so we could do it at that point if needed? I'm not suggesting to always plan for, emergency contracts, but I'm just saying seems like it would already qualify, or if it does already qualify, we'd keep this thing off the books unless it really was an actual need.
And I would defer to Sally. I think that makes a lot of sense because truly, unless this particular issue comes up, the intention is not to use the more expensive firm. So I guess, Sally, if that issue arises during the term of the contract, is there some mechanism that we could use to immediately go to Hogan Levels if we absolutely had to?
Absolutely. I think that's a prudent thing to do. We just all have to be cognizant that we cannot begin work until it's been received by the LRC. So, as long as we do the right documentation, it wouldn't need to be an emergency. We would again say it was a sole source because, of the situation and get it up there and then have the notes that we basically withdrew it because it not being definite that we were going to require these services. So.
Well, if that's the case, Mr. Chair, I'm perfectly comfortable withdrawing the Hogan Levels contract for approval and just moving forward with the K&L Gates, which is the cheaper firm.
Okay, we are withdrawing contract 20 from this. So now we are simply reviewing contract number 19 on the green list. Are there any other further questions or comments? Motion. There is a motion to approve without objection. There is a second by Representative Hart. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Mentor. Senator Meredith.
No.
Chairman Cook.
Yes. What do we have? Motion carries. Contract moves forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for being with us this morning. Next
Thank
item on the poll list with Department of Highways, number 3 on the PSC Amendment Ivory list. Switching to the Ivory. Number 3 on the Ivory. If the representatives are here, please come forward, identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. This is David Gormley with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. I'm the Assistant Director of Professional Services here in Frankfort. I've got with me Keith Downs, who was the project manager out of our Louisville District 5 office, and also Tracy Lovell, his branch manager.
Welcome. Thanks for being with us this morning. Senator Southworth has questions.
Thank you. I'm trying to get to the bottom of exactly what this really entails, because the 5 bridges contract seems like we're adding this modification to help move the 146 project forward, but it says we're only increasing it $65,000. It's like a $13 million project. So what exactly are we adding here?
We're actually adding, the agreement is just adding for roadway design services and structure services to prepare these 2 bridges to be let in December.
Okay, so you're saying that was not included in the original bridges project?
Keith may want to elaborate on what was included and how it's got kind of a long history. I know you are pushed on time this morning. It's got kind of a long history, and maybe he can give you a quick update on how this transpired.
Yeah, just like an update from, since we passed the bridges thing to now, maybe, or so, instead of the whole history.
Okay.
My name's Tracy Lovell, not with Hogan and Levels. The 5-8260 bridge project was construction only funding, I believe. And we have design plans as part of the 5-8300 project that includes 4 of those 5 bridges. This amendment to the contract would be amending the 5-8300 project to break out a portion to get the first 2 bridges along the corridor as part of the 5-8260 to construction. There wasn't a separate design just for the bridges. It was all rolled in with the 5-8300 roadway project.
Okay, so we're basically taking part of what really was in something else and putting it over to here, and it probably should have been here the whole time.
The fact that we don't have design funds for the 8260 and only construction, and the design was done for those bridges was done under 8300. Yeah, we had to break out a portion in order to get those first 2 to a letting, and in order to do that, we needed the consultant to prepare the plans to break that project up to pull out some of the bridge work.
Okay, appreciate it. Motion approved, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart, Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith, Chairman Cook.
Aye. Contract moves forward. Next item, thank you all for being with us this morning. Next item on the polled list is with the Office of the Controller. It is number 33 in the PSC Amendment Ivory list, excuse me. The representatives are here. Please identify yourself for the record.
Yes, I'm Hillary Daly. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Support Services for the Department of Corrections.
Welcome. Thanks for being with us this morning. Senator Southworth has questions.
It's probably a big surprise what I'm going to ask about. The contract seems to be doing more COVID tests, and we're increasing $2.3 million. Can you explain a good use for COVID testing in a prison system at this point?
The department continues to follow the CDC guidance on managing and preventing COVID-19 in correctional and detention facilities. As part of that guidance, testing continues to be recommended.
The DOC has authority to do whatever it wants because you're saying it's just recommended, not required?
No, we're following the guidance, and we are using federally appropriated American Rescue Plan Act funds that are designated for the purpose of continuing COVID testing.
So these funds only are for testing, not for other mitigating factors like UV filtration services on HVAC systems or anything like that?
Part of our ARPA fundings have been designated for those purposes as well.
Is the part that we have here, this $55 million or 54, all testing only, or is it multi-use funds?
I believe that $54 million figure is for the entire contract, which is for use by multiple agencies. The department's authorization with this modification is only $3 million.
And is that $3 million just tests only, or is it all the HVAC programs and this and everything else?
No, that's our estimate for testing.
Testing only.
Yes.
Which is testing only money or multi-use money?
It's the department's authorization for testing.
Okay.
I can't speak for the other agencies.
Well, and that's fine. The department certainly only knows what it is, and my mistake for forgetting that it was a multi-agency thing, but I just want to reiterate the number of millions of dollars that are going to, 99% of the inmates had COVID at any given point in time, multiple times each. And we're in a lockdown situation, and then they start using COVID tests to try to move around because it works better for them and whatever, gangs or whatever they're in. I mean, just it's crazy. Seems like to me they need to all go sit out in the yard and get some sunlight and get the UV to kill all these bugs or something instead of being stuck together, overcrowded in dorms. It's just the issues stack up and the money's stacking up. If it's federal funds designated only for testing, that's one thing, but you're still talking about, again, the taxpayer dollars. I'd like to see that money sit on the table so then it turns into a grant to help us with other things that we actually need. But I've spoken about this multiple times. I don't know what we do, Mr. Chairman, about millions of dollars going out the door. But that's pretty much answers all my questions.
Is there any further comments, or is there a motion to approve? I'll make the motion to approve without objection. Is there a second? Second by Senator Meredith. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas?
Pass.
Senator Southworth?
No.
Senator Yates? Representative Bowling? Representative Hart?
Yes.
Representative Mentor? Senator Meredith?
Aye.
Chairman Cook?
Aye. Contract moves forward. Thank you for being here with us this morning.
Thank you.
Next item on the polled list with Department for Local Government. This is number 40, 48, 52 through 56 on the routine MOA pink list, and number 24 on the MOA for 50,000 and under gray list. If the representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Hill, and I am the Land and Water Conservation Fund Administrator at the Department for Local Government.
Thank you for being with us this morning. Chairman Meredith has questions, and sir, since you polled it, I think we need to do at least two separate motions on this. Off with questioning.
I agree, and possibly three. I I picked number 40, and that's what I'm dealing with right now. And it's for a soccer complex, 100% federal funds. Is this ARPA funding?
No, this is land and water conservation funding. You cannot use ARPA funds for the LWCF.
I'm sorry, say again what fund this is coming from?
Land and Water Conservation Fund.
Okay.
It's the Parks and Recreation funding through the National Park Service.
Do we have any other contracts in this listing that are funded through that source?
You might have one for the city of Russell. It was labeled gray,
Okay.
but I didn't see gray on the agenda.
And I assume this is by application process. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, they submit an application to us. The application is scored. We have a LWCF advisory committee that hears and reviews our applications, and they make funding recommendations.
What's the total amount of the fund? Do you know?
It can range. It can range between, like right now we have 3.9 million, but it also can go up to 4.5 million.
And can you give me some idea of the criteria for selection of the successful awardees?
Yeah, so there's a scoring criteria. So basically, do they have a Parks and Recreation department that can maintain the property? Does the property fund active recreation? So those are soccer fields, not bathrooms. Do they have an active project right now is a funding criteria or a scoring criteria. How well have they administered grants in the past? And then also, do they meet our SCORP, which is the statewide outdoor recreation plan? And that is issued every 5 years. So right now we're operating under the 2020-2025 SCORP.
Okay, Mr. Chair, this is primarily just for my education, but from our listing, we've got Trigg County, $125,000 for a recreational complex. Is that land and water funds as well?
Trigg County? It could be. I do have a project in Trigg County. Let me see if it was approved. Yes, it was.
Same funding source.
Yes, I believe. Aaron, do you have a Trigg County project?
I do not have a Trigg County project. I don't see that on the list.
Okay.
So it was or was not included in the land and water?
I have a land and water project in Trigg County. It wasn't included in the list I was sent of contracts pulled. So if you do have one, I could answer questions on it.
This is number 38. It says recreational complex, $125,000. Funds to demolish an existing facility and construct a new food concession ADA restroom facility.
Let me check. Yep, that's me. So yeah, if you have any questions concerning Trigg County, I can answer them for you.
Let's do this a little bit different if we could. Would you folks mind meeting with me separately and let's talk about these? And again, this is primarily for my education, how this whole system works. But, we've got one contract here for $1 million for construction renovating existing facilities in Barberville. It's general fund, so I'm just trying to figure out what these funding sources are and what the criteria are for awarding these contracts, but this obviously doesn't tell us any of this. Could we do that? Would you mind meeting with me separately?
So you want to defer? Is that?
No, I'll act on the contracts. I'm just trying to.
Oh, just okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to meet. My the LWCF advisory committee is this afternoon. But anytime.
No hurry. Just sometime within possibly the next 30 days. Just want to know. And again, I'm looking at all these contracts under Department of Local Government, so I'd like to understand the funding source and how we differentiate what fund is used for what purpose. So again, just general education, but no immediate need for it. But I would like to meet with you folks if you would accommodate me.
Sure.
With that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for approval of contract.
Make that one. Senator Douglas has one comment, question.
I just have one quick question. Am I sure that none of these complexes are in floodplains?
We do ask for floodplain maps. Some might be located in a floodplain, but since these are all federal grants, the National Park Service reviews all grants that we submit to them before they are funded. And a floodplain is part of their environmental review process. So if it is located in a floodplain, they have to submit floodplain maps. And sometimes they have to have insurance on the property in order to be approved for federal funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Senator Meredith.
Motion to approve number 40.
Motion. Okay, so we have a motion to, do you want to do just 40 or do you want to?
Just 40 because there's a different issue.
Okay, perfect. Got it. Okay, this is a motion to approve number 40 on, what list are we on? On the pink list. Is there a second? I'll second it. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Mentor. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. Number 40 is approved. Number 48.
Mr. Chair, the next contract's number 48. And the question I have, Mr. Jones and Ms. Hill, on the TVA settlement funds, I thought the legislation passed, I guess it's 3-4 years ago, to appropriate these funds to counties. I thought that appropriation would be made directly to them. Is Department for Local Government just a channel for those funds?
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that question. Aaron Jones, branch manager, Office of State Grants with the Department for Local Government. So back in 2018, counties that participated with the TVA expanded to 39 counties. And you are correct. Out of the whole pot of money in lieu of tax payments, they do, or each of these counties, they do receive funding directly to the counties, cities, school districts. But also in 2018, this did not take effect until fiscal year 19, the General Assembly created a program called the Regional Development Agency Assistance Program. And this is basically a funding program that was statutory driven. And there are certain guidelines and expectations for each of the 39 counties to request and draw money from basically their pot or their share. It started out as $2 million in fiscal year 19. That went up to $4 million in fiscal year 20, and then it capped out at $6 million in fiscal year 21, and it's stayed at $6 million each year ever since. So basically, every year, all 39 counties get a portion of that $6 million, which equals out to be $153,846.15. That is their annual allocation. So basically, if you take the whole pot of TVA money, 70% of that, of what you're referring to, are direct payments go to the TVA counties, and then there's a 30% of it is what the General Assembly uses that created this Regional Development Agency Assistant Program, also known as RDAP for short.
So this particular contract is from that 30% pool. Is that correct?
Yes, for Hickman County's portion of that pool of money. That's correct.
Okay. Well, that was my issue. Is couldn't understand why, if counties were being allocated these monies, they had to get approved from the state. But it's this 30% pool that you're bringing these contracts to is for, correct?
That's correct. Mr. Chairman, to the best of my knowledge, I believe this program was created because the General Assembly wanted to make sure a portion of this money was being used for industrial development. There are 3 requirements that the TVA counties, when they send an application to the Department for Local Government requesting their funds, it either basically grants under this program shall be used for economic development, job creation activities, matching funds, or debt service for approved projects within the agency that is empowered to undertake in that county, which is usually an industrial development authority. And actually that was amended to be expanded to a special purpose government entity.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that explanation. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve this contract.
Okay, this is number 48 on the pink list. We have a motion to approve without objection.
Second.
Second by Senator Douglas. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Minter. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. Motion passes. Contract carries forward without objection. We're now on to the Leslie County portion of the program.
Yes, and these I believe we can take in total, Mr. Chair, and it's 52, 54, 55, 56, and what caught my attention is just the diversity in which these funds are being applied. You know, one is for construct a Little League ballpark, one is to pay fiscal court bond debt for a detention center, another one is to pay for fiscal court's insurance premiums, another is for operational expenses and facility maintenance and upgrades. The last one is pay for bond debt service as well. We have another one to pay funds for operational expenses for the county police force. So my question very basically is, what's going on with Leslie County?
Well, these funds are from the Local Government Economic Development Fund. This is the single county coal severance that they receive. There is a specific statute, KRS 42450 to 42495, which is the original statute that these funds can be used under. But notwithstanding that statute, all funds appropriated to LGEDF fund single county account shall be allocated to projects with the concurrence of the respective county judge executives, state senators, and state representatives of each county. So these projects, to be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, if you have questions about these, I would direct your questions to your colleagues, State Representative Derek Lewis and State Senator Brandon Smith.
I certainly will appreciate that, and not mean to challenge anyone, just trying to understand how this flows. So are you telling me that these contracts are all funded through co-severance?
Yes. Yes, sir. Through their single county LGEDF account, Local Government Economic Development Fund.
Well, I have no problem with that. I just trying to understand how counties are using their funds. So with that,
well, and I say that because I don't want it to be confused with the Local Government Economic Assistance Fund. Sometimes those wires can be crossed.
Well, to that end, I don't want to belabor this point on behalf of the committee members, but I'd appreciate if you and Ms. Hill would meet with me sometime in the future to talk about, again, these different funding sources. I would appreciate it. With that, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve 50, 52, 54, 55, and 56.
And 53 as well.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? I'll second it. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Minter. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. 52 through 56 are approved without objection. We are now on to number 24 on the MOA for 50,000 and under gray list. Chairman Meredith. Number 24.
Mr. Chair, I think the explanation our representatives presented to me previously answers my question with regard to that. With that, I would make a motion to approve contract number 24 on the MOA for 15,000 and under list.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Douglas. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Mentor. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. Motion is approved. Thank you for being here with us today. Let's move on to Department of Agriculture. We've got numbers 61 and 62. They're on the routine MOA pink list. If the representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. I'm David Morris. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of Marketing at KDA.
Welcome. Thanks for being here with us this morning. Co-Chair Meredith has questions.
I don't know if it's questions, most of the comments. You know, there used to be 7 deadly sins. Now there's 8, and the 8th one is a retroactive request for approval of contracts. And when I read the explanation for this, I got to admit, I don't get it. Why didn't somebody not recognize and take ownership of the fact that we needed to have this contract executed on a timely basis?
I think the explanation in the letter is I didn't write it. I don't think it's completely accurate. Let me run through the series of events. As you know, HB1 awarded KDA $500,000 in each of years 1 and 2. In the past 3 years, those same funds were awarded to CHFS, and we have a project manager that's been with us since the very beginning, and her contract ended at the end of June, at the end of the fiscal year, of course. And I take full responsibility for this. However, KDA did not have a procurement officer from mid-May to July 16th. So we didn't have the ability to put out contracts during that time. So as soon as we had one in place, as soon as we onboarded a new procurement officer, we wrote the backdate request. And because we're in fear of losing our project manager, her subject matter expertise it would have been detrimental to the project to lose her.
I certainly agree with that. I just would like some assurances that some safeguards are in place to make sure we don't have to do a retroactive on this in the future.
I assure you.
Does that mean you promise me?
Yes, sir.
Cross your fingers.
Hope to die.
All right. Motion to approve.
Motion approved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Hart. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Bowling. Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Mentor. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. Contracts are approved without objection. Don't be late. I think everybody knows that on this committee. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Final items on the polled list with Department of Education. They've been anxiously awaiting back there. So these are numbers 65 through 67, 96, 112, 113, and 115 on the routine MOA pink list, and number 34 on MOA amendment tan list. So please come forward, identify yourself for the record. We will have to do this in several different motions. So let's start off with Co-Chair Meredith on 65, 66, 67, and 96.
Hi, Karen Worth, Budget Director, Department of Ed.
Mickey Ray, Chief Academic Officer in the Office of Teaching and Learning.
All right, Chairman Meredith.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on with reading in Kentucky, and particularly the legislation that we passed this last session. And I've heard a lot of, read a lot of late about the, I guess, Stay the Nation of our reading program for our public schools, and particularly Read to Achieve. And there's been a great deal of debate as to the effectiveness of that program. So I guess what I wanted some understanding is, I thought we were moving away from Reading to Achieve, but we have grants for Reading to Achieve. So can you kind of put this together for me? I'd appreciate it.
Yes, Senator, thank you so much. So within the Read to Succeed Act, there still lives the statute that oversees Read to Achieve. And within Senate Bill 9, 2022, it establishes that the grant cycle will continue on. That was a part of the bill. And it added language to say that the board shall not restrict how the grant applicant utilizes the funding. So for the 3 schools here and districts here, they are given the funds at $62,000 for this year to be utilized in district. And all of the counties represented here primarily are using those funds to have the salary of the interventionist that would reside within the grantees.
Which is traditionally how that program has worked. And
yes, sir.
How do you see the future of this?
Based on the current language in the statute, I think that most schools and districts would continue to use the funding for salary because that was actually written in as an allowable expense. And I think that they are reliant upon those funds in many ways for those positions. So if it stays as is, I think that would continue to be the pattern.
I guess the if is the big question, and maybe that's the point of this discussion is will KDE support this program in the future? Because obviously when we come back for the 2024 budget, we'll have to review it again, if not before then, but given, for want of a better term, the notoriety behind this program, what's KDE's position on this?
I would say for us, I think as long as it is in statute and as long as it is funded, funded item, we would want to support the schools and districts in utilizing the funding as they see fit. If that's not funded and not a part of statute, then of course we would use other avenues via Read to Succeed to support schools and districts more broadly across the state in reading instruction and high quality instruction aligned to research and evidence.
I guess a more basic question is, do you all support Reading to Achieve? Beyond the legislative requirement that we have to fund it, is this the direction we should be spending our dollars?
I think that the funding is important for schools and districts, and if it is utilized for curriculum that is evidence-based and high quality, if it's utilized for professional learning beyond what we are able to provide in the Kentucky Reading Academies, then yes. There is a place for one-on-one instruction, but would we say that's the best use of funding? I think the evidence would suggest that no, we do not think that's the best use of funding for these particular grant funds. But right now, we have no say over how they're utilizing the funds. And when we tried to make some adjustments to that, there was pushback from the field. And so hence this language was added to the statute last session.
Well, I congratulate you on walking through this minefield, and I appreciate what you were saying. And Mr. Chair, I know we're dealing with 2 different issues here. One is the funding, which is required by statute. The second is I guess the validity of this program in the future, which will defer to Education Committee. But with that, I'll make a motion to approve 65, 66, 67, and 96.
And before we act on that motion, did you have a comment, Senator Douglas? I know my comment is just looking at 65, $620,000 going in there. Is that all going to reading interventionist or teacher? What?
So so their primary expense, and if you on page 6 of the contract, you can see that it's primarily going toward certified personnel, subs, Medicare, and all of those expenses that would go into the salary line for the interventionist. They are using some funding for professional learning and registration fees and travel. So they are diversifying it a bit more, but the majority of the funding is going to the interventionists in those schools.
Is it working?
I would say that it can work, but we would like to see, and that's why we were wanting to change the process for Read to Achieve, to encourage schools and districts to invest more in the professional learning, something that's going to more broadly impact teachers across the entire school building, rather than just putting the funds into one salaried position. But as I said, right now, the statute says that is an allowable expense, and that is what most districts are choosing to do in terms of utilizing the RTA funds.
So you'll be back up here this session testifying in front of Education Committee about this?
I'm sure I likely will. Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion to approve 65, 66, and 67. Is that right, Senator Meredith?
That's correct, yes.
Is there a second? And 96.
Yes.
65, 66, 67, and 96. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Southworth. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
Well, to coin some phrases from Senator Meredith earlier, I begrudgingly.
Senator Southworth,
Spend my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I vote aye. Once again, this is definitely an issue we need to be working on, and I mentioned earlier our very, very worrisome reading proficiency levels. I don't think that we can tag it on Read to Achieve program not working necessarily. I think the problem is we're trying to funnel 50+% of our students through a program that's meant to be a one-on-one assistance for the few that actually do struggle. So I think the one-on-one interventions will always be needed for, the handful out there. We just can't be relying on it for 50% of the students in 10% of the districts. I mean, that is the whole problem with this whole thing. The fact that you have a few students struggling in any school is expected and should actually be staffed every school. So that's why I support this, but certainly we've got a ton of work to do in the literacy realm. Thank you.
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Cook.
I think we're throwing more stuff in the stew, Senator Douglas. I vote aye. Okay, let's go to those 65 through 67 and 96. Move forward without objection. We're now moving on to 112, 113, and 115.
No questions regarding this, and Mr. Chair, just a comment. I think that this group has failed the Commonwealth and has failed it miserably. I think in the years that they when they were established early on, the intent was good, but they've never fulfilled that intent. We have seen our reading scores continue to decline after making a temporary increase. We've seen the latest report. We can blame it on COVID. We can blame a lot of things, but these folks simply have not delivered, have not had any accountability to our legislature. I think it's just become an academic think tank that has not done anything other than perpetuate their own existence. So I would make a motion to disapprove this contract.
Second.
Hold on. Which contract specific?
112.
112. We have a motion to disapprove contract 112, and second by Senator Douglas. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Southworth,
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I vote aye. I think that part of this is our problem as a legislature by having this outfit even in the statute to say they're going to do these things, because we know they're not. We just passed new funding to try to get a hold of our reading programs, and these people supposedly have been working on that, and I haven't seen it. So I like the idea of defunding, but I also want to take it a step further and really figure out how to get the system back on the rails eventually. Thank you.
Did she make a vote?
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith,
Let's play my vote.
Yes, sir.
Not to belabor the point, but I think this group has been given that opportunity to give us direction, and they haven't done it. I don't know what's going to change in the future that suggests now they're going to be effective in delivering products to our public education system that will improve test scores. They've had their opportunity. We've invested millions of dollars in this and have not seen any return on those dollars whatsoever. So I vote yes on the motion.
Chairman Cook.
I vote aye. 112 is disapproved. 113 and 115 now.
Thank you.
113, I'd appreciate an explanation of the position. Looks like a brand new position.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Excuse me.
Microphone.
David Cook again, the Division of Innovation at KDE. So as part of our state, go ahead, David.
I'm David Wickersham from the Office of Special Education and Early Learning at KDE to speak on 115.
Okay.
So I'm here to speak on 113. Senator Meredith, during all the stimulus dollars that came, the ESSER money that came to us, part of that was to allow us to provide some funding out to the state to think about things that would improve education, improve learning. So we had a RFP process, and the 8 educational cooperatives together submitted a bid for a contract called Deeper Learning, which is they're trying to help get at learning at a deeper level in all of our districts. 166 of our 171 districts are part of this program. Each district is receiving funding, but at the center of it, of course, you can imagine, is a leadership situation where we needed a director to manage the whole of the state. So this contract is that director's position. So it's a grant-funded position for the life of the grant, and it's housed at. We have a nonprofit association that is the 8 cooperatives together, and this person is housed at that office.
So that salary, that $394,000, is their salary for 22 months?
Yes, sir.
Could I just add, that's an up to amount. The first year, since the contract start date is not until November 4th, the first year is actually in the contract listed as 240 working days, but he will not work 240 working days in that first year. So the first year salary is an up to amount. And we can modify the contract to get a more specific number of days if necessary.
Any other questions or comments, Senator Southworth?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's where I was looking at on page 5 of the contract, going through the actual salary and fringe and everything, because this does pretty much mean $200,000 a year, and fringe is $48,000, so 40 for the second year. So anyway, we're over 150 average per year. I'm aware that the Commissioner of Education is not subject to statutory rule of nobody makes more than the governor, and the governor makes a little less than 150. Do the other Board of Education, or all the other employees of the Board of Education or Kentucky Department of Education, are they subject to the statute? Because I thought it was only the commissioner that's not. But it seems like to me the employees couldn't be making this, so I'm having a hard time with how the contractors should.
It's my understanding that this person is a former superintendent, I believe retired, and was hired back under this contract, and this was a negotiated salary. That was through KAEC, which is the cooperative, the uniform entity, nonprofit for all 8 of the education cooperatives. So I would need to defer to them as to how the salary was negotiated.
Okay, that wasn't actually my question, though. My question was the legality. Could we pay a KDE employee this?
Yes.
We could pay a KDE employee.
I believe a non-merit KDE employee could be
also
paid.
Qualifies as an exemption like the commissioner does.
I think that's correct.
Yes.
And the other thing to remember is this salary, we have, I'm not sure the exact number, I'd have to look. We have a number of superintendents that are making this salary or greater.
I'm well aware, but they don't fall under the same rules as state employees, so that's why I'm comparing state contracts to state employees. I would love to have the high quality professional workforce in education, but I'd like to have them all over the state as well. And obviously we've been sitting here talking about $125 an hour attorney contracts, and governor makes 140 something, I think. At some point we have to figure that out, but it is kind of the issue when we want to have a professional workforce in education, but somehow they're making dollars that no one else has seen. We got engineers, we got everybody. Everybody's professional around here, and they're not seeing that kind of money. And then at the end of the day, it kind of comes back on us. Well, we don't care about the kids or the teachers. Well, this stuff blows our minds when we see it because our eyes aren't used to these numbers in any frame of reference in state government. And here we are talking about these numbers. So I'm not saying that this isn't a negotiated salary, that the superintendent's used to this kind of salary. If he's retired, seems like maybe he's got retirement. He doesn't need his full salary again. I mean, just an idea. So we need to figure out smart ways to do things, and retired superintendents be fantastic to be able to work for a lower salary because they have retirement benefits. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Double dipping is at the beyond the top of the echelon level is a little difficult for us to digest, being the taxpayer dollars.
Any other questions or comments?
Follow up, please. As part of the agreement description, it says that this will be the primary spokesperson for deeper learning work. We approved a contract previously for project learning. Does this fall under that umbrella, or is these two different initiatives altogether?
They are very inextricably, I mean, they are connected. To me, project-based learning is the number one way we talk. When we talk about deeper learning, project-based learning is one of the primary ways in which we do that. So these contracts, remember that the project-based learning contract actually came to you a year ago. We've been doing it with teachers for over a year now, and this is a newer contract.
So we're building a structure around project learning, which is incorporated into this bigger program of deeper learning.
Right, and they're connected too in the sense that the project-based learning is much more about teacher professional learning. This is more about the programs and the tools and the resources that those teachers would then have, so that the funding is intended to complement. If you think about it,
but who comes responsible for the final product? Is it this individual, or is it our commissioner?
This individual is responsible for the reporting back to the Department of Education about how each of these districts have spent the funds to support deeper learning.
What happens when the federal funding is no longer available?
That's an individual district, and hopefully, by virtue of having their teachers trained and having these programs started, they will have a leg up on sustaining them.
Well, that's on a micro level, but on a macro, if federal funding disappears, who's responsible for the salary of this individual?
That would be the conversation for the Association of Educational Cooperatives, because they're the ones that are going to support this person beyond this grant.
So we would either have to make a general fund allocation, or they have to agree to divvy up the cost of the salary amongst them.
Probably have to come from the cooperative.
They come a backward way of still, it's going to come from the general fund somewhere or another. The general fund that's designated for education. I don't know if we're going to have a standalone item for this, but it looks like more bureaucracy to me. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a motion on, what are we on, 113? Motion to approve or disapprove? Okay. 113 moves forward. We are now on number 115.
Almost $1 million, and we're talking about evaluation, multi-tiered evidence-based practices. What is that?
Yes, sir. Make sure I'm on. Okay, great. So we had this contract before you last year for a shorter period of time. We had a 7-month original contract with the Human Development Institute, essentially to help us make sure that in our expenditure from the state set aside from ARP monies, that we're essentially rolling out evidence-based practices that we can study to be sure that the interventions that we're working with are actually effective. We did not actually expend the full amount of the earlier contract on this. This one is for a 20-month duration as opposed to the 7 that we had done before for something north of $400,000, I think. What we're attempting to do here is to continue to use HDI both in the planning of the work and in giving us feedback on the effectiveness of what we are rolling out. There are two facets to the work. We have an early learning component that is focused primarily on K-2, and then we have a transition age group that is focused more on the successful transition for students with disabilities into the workforce or into higher education upon graduation. So that's kind of the two branches of this. The work that they're supporting right now is the implementation of self-assessments in districts about the effectiveness of the transition work that they're already engaged in. That's more on the transition side. And then on the early learning side, we've got a couple of different things going. One is a teacher leader community. We've got about 73 folks involved in that who are early learning people who essentially are convening once a month for support and professional learning. And then on the other side, we've got a group, I think around 70 participants and a group for folks who are new in leadership positions in districts, both in early learning and then in special ed. So those are essentially the people that we're trying to prop up here, and the purpose of the evaluative contract is to tell us whether that's effective, sustainable, and how that might be done.
We reviewed a lot of contracts today, and quite truthfully, I haven't seen anyone that gives me a confidence level that we're going to improve the quality of education in Kentucky. That's unfortunate. I think we're creating additional bureaucracy, which is going to make the lives of our teachers and our students more difficult. I really wish, and I would certainly support an appropriation for a few $1 million to actually go out and ask teachers, frontline people, how can we make your work environment better? What can we do to improve the quality of education for our students? And I don't see we're asking teachers those things. There are opportunities, and I'm not speaking out of ignorance. I have a wife who's a teacher for 32 years, and I assure you she could spend a day with you and tell you some things that would significantly improve the quality of education in Kentucky, but nobody talks to those people. We have to listen to the experts. The problem with the experts is experts don't know what they don't know. And they're coming from a field almost from an academic environment that really is not real life. We've got theory, we've got practical application, and very rarely do they meet. But this is troublesome that we're not focused on the real issues that are at hand, and we're just creating more bureaucracy. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, do we have a motion on number 115, either to approve or disapprove? Seeing none, contract moves forward. We're now on, what are we on? 34 on the tan. Senator Southworth has questions. Sir, you want to identify yourself for the record?
Yes, good morning. My name is Matthew Courtney. I'm with the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support at KDE.
Thank you. I've seen a number of these come through in the past, and I've never really been 100% sure what exactly they do. So if you could maybe just describe what it even is, or what's going on, that'd be a good start.
Sure, thank you. So this is an amendment to an existing contract that supports our Project Aware grant. Project Aware is a federally funded program that was awarded to the department under the Trump administration that is designed to help provide resources for schools facing issues with trauma-informed instruction and student mental health concerns. This particular amendment is being brought in response to the significant natural disasters that our schools and communities have experienced as of late. And the addition to this contract is designed to provide targeted resources and training to educators in those disaster-affected areas so that they are better equipped to serve our students who have experienced many different kinds of loss and homelessness and other trauma-instigating factors.
So this amendment is on to the existing program, specifically around those areas of the western, eastern Kentucky, I'm assuming.
Yes, that's correct. So it's taking this existing work and really targeting it so that we can reach more educators, and particularly educators in those support services, school-based mental health professionals, family youth resource center directors, guidance counselors, folks who are really in positions to provide direct support services to children who've experienced trauma.
Okay, so I'm seeing here, and I apologize for not having looked at the contract thoroughly to get my questions together, but I'm looking, looks like you have somebody is kind of maybe the director and 3% of their salary is being used on this, and then you've got the trainers that are half and half. another 35%er. So essentially, we're getting a little over a full-time employee on all of this together, put it all together. So basically, existing employees that are they already employed for this purpose or for another purpose, but somehow we're using 50% of them, and so they're funded this way?
So these trainers are funded out of this grant, and so we are because we're adding those trainings. That's why you're seeing that amendment to their salaries. We're expanding their scope of work a little.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, do we have a motion on number 34 on the TAN list?
So moved.
Motion by Representative Hart. Is there a second? I'll second it. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
I'm going to pass.
Senator Southworth,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Cook.
Aye. Motion moves forward without objection. Okay. Thank you all for being here with us today. Committee, take a moment to review items 12 through 15 on your agenda. These are exemption requests. Is there a motion to approve them? We have a motion to approve the exemption request. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Meredith. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Southworth,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Bowling, Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Mentor, Senator Meredith, Chairman Cook.
Aye. All those items are exemption request granted. December 22 meeting will be December 13th, 9:00 a.m. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second.
I begrudgingly
Second.
vote yes on adjournment.
Enthusiastically vote yes. Time for stew. If the cafeteria doesn't have stew today, they're missing a golden opportunity.
Yeah, them were the days.